Well, that's the one that I have for sure. I got a couple of others that I think are right, but the one that I am now pretty much certain on is Washington on Christmas Day against the Cowboys at Northwest Stadium. The whole schedule will be out tonight. You're seeing, I'm sure, if you're following this, a lot of leaks coming out. Um, did the Junkies actually use my tweet as breaking news?
They didn't use it as breaking news, but they did mention it to close out the show that it was tweeted out by you.
Okay. Yeah, I feel very confident that the information that I have is accurate and that Washington is going to host Dallas on Christmas Day. It'll be a Netflix game, probably the first game at 1 p.m., not the 4:30 p.m. Game. It looks like already, according to, I don't know if this is an official announcement from the league, but it looks like KC Denver is going to be the Christmas night game. And so there will be two others because it's going to be a triple header on Christmas Day. And to be honest with you, I don't know if Netflix has all three games or just two of the three, but Washington-Dallas will be a Netflix Christmas Day game at Northwest Stadium. I got a couple of other things that I'm just trying to get confirmed. Here's the one thing that I'm just going to tell you. I've gotten some of these things right in recent years, and separate from the mock, schedule. The mock schedule is the mock schedule. It's a bit. Now, I'm going to be right about them not playing on Thanksgiving, which many of you pushed back on and said, you're wrong. They're going to play in Madrid. They're going to have a bye week, and then they're going to play the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. And I said, I had the guy that makes the schedule on the show back in mid-April, and he kind of presented Madrid, no Thanksgiving, or Madrid or Thanksgiving as an either or. And once Madrid was confirmed, and I went with Madrid on my mock, I went no Thanksgiving. And it looks like, my God, that's a blockbuster. Cowboys and Chiefs on Thanksgiving Day was announced officially, right? I think it was. Or maybe Schefter had it, which might as well be official. That means the Cowboys and the Chiefs are playing on both Christmas and Thanksgiving. That Chiefs-Cowboys game on Thanksgiving, I don't know, maybe the Cowboys will stink. It usually doesn't matter as long as they're in the game. But I've seen all of the reports, too, from the guy that's breaking the Giants schedule that Washington's going to open up with the Giants on Sunday, September 7th. That's not the sexiest of openers, but I think still Washington's going to have their fair share of highlighted games, high-profile games, prime-time games. Wouldn't surprise me if the Chiefs game at Arrowhead that Washington has is a prime-time game, and it certainly wouldn't surprise me if, like, the Packers are a prime-time game at Lambeau, maybe early in the season. We'll see on that. I'll let you know if I get confirmation on some of the other stuff that I've learned as the show goes on. But yeah, I've had multiple sources confirm Washington, Dallas, Christmas Day in Landover on Netflix, not the night game. And I was told that it's more likely than not the first game of the day rather than the 4:30 p.m. We'll see. That's more of a probably 1 p.m. versus 4:30. Schedule day, everybody. God, this day has turned into something else. I mean, it's not that long ago. And when I say not that long ago, I'll say 10 years ago that there was nowhere near the attention paid in the lead up to the schedule being announced like there is now. There are dedicated social media sites to this NFL schedule. And everybody's trying to dig to try to get the information. My preference would actually be, we talk about it, but the league doesn't divulge anything, and they do it all in one fell swoop. Now, that isn't what the league's going to do. The league's going to leak like they've this week with their network partners. They're going to create some of these big moments on the Today Show and I don't even know where they're breaking some of this other stuff or announcing some of the other stuff. But they're going to, put some games out there for sure. Washington's never played on Christmas Day. They've played many times on Christmas Eve, including a playoff game on Christmas Eve back in 1972 against the Packers at RFK Stadium. But they have been one of the teams that has never played on Christmas Day. But they are going to play on Christmas Day this year, and it's going to be against their, arch rivals. Certainly, we still feel about them that way, even if the feeling isn't necessarily mutual. But, man, one of the things you've seen with some of the actual reports, and if some of the other, reports out there are now kind of getting confirmed and are true, you're starting to see, once again, it doesn't matter if the Cowboys are good or bad or perceived to be good or bad. They're just going to continue to get all of these high-profile games. They are still a massive draw in the sport. They're going to open with Philly on Thursday Night Football, first game of the year, and they're going to play the Chiefs on Thanksgiving, and they're going to play the Skins on Christmas Day. So, I don't know. How does everybody feel? Like when we did that poll last week, Max, let me go look at the results. Remember, I put the poll out. Do you prefer Thanksgiving, Christmas, or neither?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, here it is. Thanksgiving was 45.3% of the vote.
Ooh.
Neither was 33.5% of the vote. And Christmas was 21.2% of the vote. So, a healthy sample size, and 1 out of 5 basically are okay with Christmas Day. And look, if you're especially if you're in a house that celebrates Christmas with young kids, it's not in the morning. Again, they're not playing it in the morning.
True.
They are playing it in the afternoon. And but yeah, pretty wild that Washington's going to play Dallas on Christmas. But that's the NFL now. We're going to see a triple header, I think, every Christmas Day. The NFL has basically said to the NBA, yeah, no, hold my drink, please. You guys are done. And the thing that I don't like about what the NFL is doing now is they're also now telling college football, yeah, we love you. And we're essentially in many ways, not financially tied, but we are partners in so many ways. But our product is going to go where we tell, it to go. And that means, sorry, but Black Friday is no longer, your day exclusively. And on that third Saturday of December 20th, where you will have a triple header of first round playoff games, you're going to have a double header of NFL games, including Washington and Philadelphia. Somebody said to me, is that a prime time game? I don't think it is. I think that those Saturday games will be 1:00 and 4:30. That's my guess. With Washington then playing the following Thursday on Christmas Day, it's more than ample enough time. Washington doesn't have technically 2 short weeks. They're going to play a Thursday night football game. Wouldn't surprise me if it's like on the road. Somebody like Green Bay at Lambeau seems like, a possibility. In my mock, I had a Thursday night game at Minnesota early in the season. Wouldn't surprise me if the Thursday night game is early in the season for Washington. But the Christmas Day game is not technically the super short week because they're going to play on Saturday and then Thursday rather than Sunday and Thursday. So they'll have a Sunday, Thursday, I think early in the season on Thursday night, and then late in the season. Okay. We can talk schedule all we want. I like this stuff. It looks like, according to the reports, the Giants in the opener, that's not official. That is a Jersey report, correct? Somebody that's kind of leaked out the Giants schedule, Max. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I saw the leak, a leak of like the first 4 games for the New York Giants.
Art Stapleton.
Yeah, I think that was the same account.
NorthJersey.com. He also writes for USA Today. He's got 104,000, followers, and he's got the Giants. How about this if you're the Giants? If this is true, at Washington week 1, at Dallas week 2, the Chiefs at home on Sunday Night Football week 3, the Chargers at home week 4, and then the Eagles on Thursday Night Football week 6. My
Good
God,
luck.
how many primetime games are the Eagles going to have? It seems like everything that's been leaked has been an Eagles primetime game.
Do you think Brian Daboll has a job by the time they get to that week 6 game against the Eagles?
I mean, you can't start Jackson Dart against that schedule, can you?
You shouldn't. You shouldn't.
It'll be Russ. It has to be Russ, right? That's it.
Or
They got Russ
maybe.
And Jackson Dart?
Yeah, Russ, Jameis, Jackson Dart. And it's going to be an interesting QB room.
Wait. Jameis is there too.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So it's going to be an interesting. I'll have my eyes on the New York Giants.
Do you think Jameis could get traded to New Orleans?
Absolutely. That would be really funny given how it ended.
Is that a discussion or not?
I haven't heard anybody bring it up, but
okay.
It is not the worst idea. But again, like
has Jameis quarterbacked for any Kellen Moore offensive coordinator team? Dallas, Philly? No, right?
No.
I'll tell you what, like if the Giants are the opener, if that is true, week 1's always a complete head fake kind of a deal. You're familiar with Brian Daboll. It's not like it's a new coach. Sometimes that's a challenge, although it was not a challenge for Tampa Bay last year against Washington in the opener. And those week 1 games are just rarely a strong indication of what is to come.
Right.
And we saw that with our own team in week 1 getting destroyed by Tampa and then, being 7-1 and 8-2 or whatever we got to 10-3. And ended up beating that same team in the postseason on the road. I look at the Giants, and they're going to have a completely different team because they're going to have a new quarterback, but it's a quarterback that we're familiar with if Russell Wilson is the week 1 starter. The Giants, I have thought this now for 2 years running. I don't think that they are without talent. I think defensively they've had some talent. Dexter Lawrence is one of the best in the game. Burns, Okereke, the guy McFadden's good. Now they're going to add Abdul Carter to the mix. You have the Maryland kid in the secondary, Banks. Who else do they have in the secondary of the Giants? I think they lost what's his face, the guy that was with the Chiefs, but. I don't know. The Giants just always seem to have more talent, and they just have had the wrong offensive skill position players. Saquon wasn't right because he wasn't always available. They have a guy in Neighbors now, but it's really been the quarterback more than anything else. Their offensive line's gotten decent in recent years with Andrew Thomas and the center that they drafted from Minnesota a couple of years ago.
John Michael Schmitz.
Yeah. I'm probably forgetting somebody. Let me bring
John Runyon, Greg Van Roten. I have the depth chart in front of me.
Yeah. Yeah. And the back is good. I like Tyrone Tracy last year.
He's
he was
very
a good back.
Runs strong. It kind of, I want to say Pacheco-like, but I feel like he's shiftier than Pacheco. The point is he runs angry is what I'm trying to say.
Not as angry as Pacheco does.
That's
I don't
true.
think anybody runs as angry as Pacheco does. Although Cam Scadaboo, who they drafted, runs angry.
He's wearing 44. I'm kind of.
Is he wearing 44?
Yeah. Right now, it's always subject change before.
What did he wear at Arizona State? It was a single-digit number, wasn't it?
I believe so. Let me check.
I think it was number 4.
It's something like that.
With all that said about the Giants, let me be the first one to say, you better win the opener at home against the Giants. You're going to be about a 9-10 point favorite. I'm putting the line out right now for week 1 against the Giants. Washington minus 8.5.
Ooh.
Washington minus 8.5 in the opener against the Giants. If the Giants is the opening week 1 opponent. And it sounds like that game, has somebody listed a time? That might be the 4:25 doubleheader game. Could be the lead game at 1 o'clock. Who knows?
It feels like a 1 o'clock matchup, but it's an NFC East head-to-head game, so I could see it going for 4:25.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm sure we're here for you all morning long, all day long. Anything that comes in that is reported from a really good source or is something that we're feeling good about, we'll mention it and we'll discuss it. But again, nothing's official unless the league has announced it, and then we'll know, everybody will, the entirety of the schedule by 8:00 at night. But don't be surprised tonight, like if the whole Washington schedule's been leaked, because this thing now in recent years, because of the interest, leaks like a sieve. It really does. But yeah, I think I was the first with this. Washington, Dallas on Christmas Day. It's going to be more likely than not a 1:00 game on Netflix. It could be 4:30, but Washington's going to host Dallas on Thanksgiving. And as I, there's a couple of other games that I have. I've mentioned that I think a Packers game in prime time very early in the season is a good bet. I'm just waiting for confirmation on that. Like, it would not surprise me if Washington plays like a Thursday night game at Lambeau very early in the season. That was, I'll lean towards that, and I think a game at some point during the season on Monday Night Football at Arrowhead is a decent bet too. And that's the last time they played the Chiefs at Arrowhead, was on Monday Night Football in 2017. So we'll see if that comes to fruition as well. That's kind of what I have. I think wouldn't surprise me if you got a couple of tough trips, on short weeks too. They play on the schedule. They play the Chargers out west. That is their one West Coast trip. The furthest west they go is Chargers and Chiefs. So theoretically, the tough trip could be something like Kansas City to LA. But stay tuned. We'll update you on this. Caps don't play tonight, game 5. They play game 5 tomorrow night, so they get the extra day to kind of figure things out. I watched NBA basketball last night again. Yep, I'm watching a lot of it, and the game last night was spectacular. Now, look, the Pacers. This is a disappointing loss for the Cleveland Cavaliers. They got handled by the Pacers in 5 games. And by the way, Max, the Pacers absolutely can beat the Knicks or the Celtics.
Oh, for sure.
I'm not counting the Celtics out yet.
Really?
Even though the Tatum injury was a ruptured Achilles.
That's tough.
It's not going to surprise me if Boston wins tonight and somehow steals game 6 to force a game 7. But the Knicks have already won twice in Boston. So I think that series has more time in it than maybe people are thinking because of the big injury. But I do want to just take a moment, because last night's performance by Nikola Jokic was all time. He becomes, I think, just the second player in NBA playoff history to go for 40, 15, and at least 5 in a playoff game. He was 44 points on, by the way, 17 of 25 shooting. He had a nightmarish game 3 from behind the arc. He was 0 for 11. He was 5 for 7 last night. He's missed some key free throws in this series. He was 5 for 5. He had 44 points on 17 of 25 from the field. He had 15 rebounds, 6 of them offensive rebounds. He had 2 steals in the game. He only had 5 assists, but it was not his fault. The reason he only had 5 assists is because Christian Braun, Aaron Gordon, and Michael Porter combined to go 3 for 18 on wide open looks from behind the arc, set up more often by Nikola Jokic. He should have had a double-digit assist night and a triple-double as well. He was incredible. So was Jamal Murray. I mean, the 2 stars really did give. I mean, Denver was an 11-point underdog in game 5 at Oklahoma City. They took an 8-point lead into the third quarter. They had a 9-point lead at one point in the fourth quarter. And then they just kind of went cold for a stretch. And man, Michael Porter Jr. who is feast or famine. He's playing injured. Okay, so you have to mention that. He's playing injured, but he's averaging 7.2 points per game in this series, and he's shooting 25.9% from behind the arc, and he's only had one good basketball game. In the last 2 games, he's gone 0 for 5 and 0 for 5, and 1 for 7 overall and 1 for 7. He's 2 for 14 from the field and 0 for 10 from behind the arc in the last 2 basketball games against Oklahoma City. And that's essentially right there the reason that Denver isn't moving on at this point and instead is down 3-2 in the series. Tough break for Denver to have a Michael Porter Jr. not at 100%, but then on top of it, really playing horrendously because that game was right there for the taking. God, do I love watching Nikola Jokic play. If you don't like watching Nikola Jokic play basketball, you've never been a basketball fan, ever. This guy is going to go down, okay, legitimately. He is going to go down as one of the 5 greatest centers in the history of the game, and it's very possible when he is done, he'll go down as easily a top 5 to top 10 player of all time. That's how great he is. Some people suggest that he's already the most versatile and greatest center of all time. I can't go there yet. Okay, I cannot put him in front of Wilt or Kareem. In my opinion, Olajuwon, obviously Russell with all the championships, but he needs to take this team over the hump and win another championship or 2. He does not have a great supporting cast. They don't have a backup center on the team. How do you not have a backup center in the NBA? DeAndre Jordan is technically the backup center, but he's 38 years old, and he doesn't play. They just go small when Jokic comes out for the 4 or 5 minutes a game that he comes out for. He played 44 minutes last night, did not come out in the second half. Rested 4 minutes in the first half. That was it. How do you not have a roster builder who says, what if we lose Jokic for a week with, an injury? They don't have a backup center essentially on the roster. And the other guy, I just can't watch Russell Westbrook play basketball anymore. Used to love him. Used to be one of my favorite players in the league. And the truth is, he has played at times pretty well in this postseason. Last night, he was 1 for 7. And he had 3 3-pointers, which he was 0 for 3. 2 of them did not hit the rim. They were air balls. And a third clanked so hard off the backboard, it was not an attempted banked-in shot. It nearly broke the glass. He is one horrendous shooter. And then some nights it's like, oh, my God, he made a bunch of shots. But they did not get the performance they needed last night from Porter Jr., Christian Braun, Russell Westbrook. The 3 players combined to go 5 for 23 from the field. And that killed Denver's chances to take a 3-2 series lead. Oklahoma City's really good. What is going to happen, Max, if Oklahoma City plays Indiana in the NBA championship? Or Minnesota plays Indiana in the NBA championship? It will be the least watched NBA finals of all time. And yet, there are superstars in the game. Anthony Edwards, if it was Minnesota. If it's OKC, it's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Tyrese Halliburton for Indiana. Man, they are praying for the Knicks to get through here. And they've got a good shot to get it done. All right. More NFL news to share with you. Some of it having to do with our team. That's next. Kevin Sheehan Show. The Team 980, theteam980.com. We do have 2 guests on the show today. Steve Sands is going to join us from Quail Hollow, where the PGA Championship is set to get underway tomorrow, the second of the 4 majors on the spring-summer golf calendar. And then Tommy is going to jump on with me at noon to talk about Pete Rose and Rob Manfred removing Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson from the permanently ineligible list. Does this mean that Pete Rose is now destined to make the Hall of Fame? Maybe a top 3 sports debate of the last 30 years plus. Pete Rose, yes or no, as a Hall of Famer. Well, now he can actually be voted into the Hall of Fame. Will it happen? Tommy is a Hall of Fame baseball voter and writer. He will jump on with us at noon. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, the team980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app. Do you have that? So there are some interesting offseason NFL questions that still haven't been answered. And I think the biggest one out there right now is Aaron Rodgers. But the second biggest is Trey Hendrickson. And Trey Hendrickson spoke yesterday. We have that, Max?
Oh, yeah. I've got all 3 minutes of it.
Yeah, it is. First of all, I'll be honest with you. I don't think I've actually heard Trey Hendrickson get interviewed before.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard him speak.
And we had somebody on the show yesterday, a caller who is a Cincinnati Bengals fan, who, in addition to describing Trey Hendrickson as a one-trick pony, as just a sack artist, which, as our caller Ian said, it's a pretty good trick if that's the one trick, which is a good point. Not often made by Ian, but a good point. Like, okay, he can only sack the quarterback 17 and a half times in a season. So what if he can't do anything else? Yes, I agree with that, because pressuring the quarterback and sacking the quarterback is actually impactful to wins and losses. But I had never, I don't think, heard Trey Hendrickson speak again. This guy also mentioned Hendrickson is kind of thoughtful, I think he said, or maybe somebody else said that, and very religious. He was he was actually in attendance at a voluntary off-season workout day in Cincinnati yesterday, and then reporters got a hold of him. We talked yesterday. We took calls. Would you want Trey Hendrickson or not? If you had to give up a first-round pick. I don't know exactly what the compensation would be. I think that's a fairly decent guess as to what the Cincinnati Bengals would require, I think, minimum, especially when we're talking about 2026, because it's too late to give them 2025 picks, unless you're going to give them the players you drafted. But I think this situation has gotten to a point where we've seen these before. We're NFL fans. We know that it gets confrontational, it can get ugly, and then all of a sudden, deadlines make deals, right? So the season's going to open up on Sunday, September 7th, and he has missed all of training camp and all of the preseason games. And so what's going to happen is he going to actually sit out and turn down $21 million of paycheck money in 2025, and then they come up with some deal and he ends up signing and everybody says the right things about each other. I still think that'll be the final conclusion. But I was listening to this. I watched, and I didn't realize it was 3 minutes. I thought it was maybe half that. But I do want to play all of it, because this guy, either you're going to come away from it thinking, I don't want any part of this dude, he's kind of full of himself, he's got some issues, or you're going to be like, that guy seems to have it together. And the Bengals have always been notorious for being cheap and for being stubborn and weird. I want him. But here was Trey Hendrickson yesterday talking to reporters about the standoff between himself and the Cincinnati Bengals.
At this point, do you want to be a Cincinnati Bengal?
Wow, that's a tough question too, because you try not to let the business become personal. I think over the last week or so, it's become personal, unfortunately. And when there's a lack of communication in any relationship, if it's business or a personal relationship, lack of communication leads to animosity, and that leaves my narrative only to me with no clear direction. So the lack of direction, the lack of communication is leading to things that are allowing me to think about what's going to happen more than how great they have treated me over the last 4 years. Because let me say, my son was born, I've said it to everyone, my son was born right up the road. My wife worked at the Cincinnati VA. This is my home, and I wrote that yesterday. It's home. And unfortunately for myself, I have to deal with that kind of dilemma in my own, finding out business and personal. Because on the one hand, you see OTAs and you smell the grass and it's football. And man, I'd be lying if I said I didn't love it. And on the other hand, there's a proper time for that. And there's a lot of things that have to change before that happens.
A quick follow-up to that. You talked about how the narrative in your statement yesterday. Why have you made the choice to go to the national media to talk about your side of things?
I think a lot of players in the past have been silent or didn't stand on values where telling the truth will set you free. It's a value my parents raised me with when I was young. As a follower of Christ, the truth is the way. And so to have these tough conversations and say the truth, right? I'm a Floridian. So there's unprovoked shark attacks and there's provoked shark attacks. And the comments that are being made, right? Whatever happened at the combine, whatever happened at the owners' meetings, and the text I got yesterday, this is not something where I'm just twiddling my thumbs thinking, oh, how can I get the next one up? Most of the teammates will agree. I don't spare my opinions. I kind of stay out of the media for that reason because I am an emotional player, and after a loss, it's a lot harder to talk than after a win, especially in the circumstances that we had last season. So I carry it with a tremendous amount of respect, but these things are provoked. I would love to say to sit quiet is a good strategy. It is clearly not. Players have done it all over the league, including Jamar last year. He did a great job being disciplined through the process, and great. I'm so proud of him and the way he handled adversity. I can't speak enough volumes, but he deserved a contract last year. He deserves it this year, and he deserves one in 5 years.
So that was Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati yesterday. Apparently, he went on for like 20 minutes with reporters. I thought that last part, why be so public about it? My personal preference in these situations, especially, any kind of business transaction, there are opportunities and times in which going public and trying to generate public sentiment in your favor maybe works towards your advantage, but more times than not, it's not influential in the deal and actually can be more problematic and hurtful in your dealing with a team. The one thing he did not specify after saying the truth will set you free, that's why he went public. He talked about he's a Floridian and there are unprovoked shark attacks and there are provoked shark attacks. And he talked about text messages that he got yesterday. I'm presuming from the team. He didn't get specific about that, I don't think, at any point. This does feel like one of those situations, especially when you consider the team and the team's history of playing hardball and being difficult and being stubborn and at times being cheap over the years. There is the one of my favorite Bengals stories that involves Washington was when Vinny Serrato bragged that they had offered Cincinnati 2 first-round picks for Chad Ochocinco. This was probably 2008, 2009, something like that. And he said he couldn't believe that they didn't accept it. And I thought, you talk about sort of the blind leading the blind in that situation. I mean, 2 first-round picks for Chad Ochocinco. Thank God Cincinnati was stupid enough to not accept that deal in the moment. Like, just disclosing that. And I've come to actually enjoy Vinny over the years. And to be honest with you, when Vinny was working with the organization and Vinny would sit with us sometimes on live, shows or whatever, Vinny's always been, anybody will tell you this, Vinny is a very nice guy, good guy. Just had the unfortunate, job of working for Dan Snyder and probably, a job that was given to him that he wasn't necessarily ready for. The head of a team's personnel department is the team's general manager, or de facto GM. But really, we know that Dan was kind of the GM during those years. But I'll never forget saying, oh, my God, why would you admit that you offered 2 first-rounders for a receiver? Not for Randy Moss, not for Jerry Rice, but for Chad Ochocinco. And look, Chad Ochocinco was a good receiver. He was not a 2 first-round pick receiver. But that was back in the days when literally if Snyder wanted somebody, he'd ask what it cost, and then he'd actually offer 20 to 30% more than what it costs just to ensure that he got it. I mean, they lined up from all over the league to take advantage of Washington during those years, but Cincinnati, for some reason, Mike Brown decided not to take advantage of Washington. And I thought that's one of the dumbest things. I would have accepted that. Or actually, with Snyder, I would have just said 2 firsts isn't enough. We'll take 2 firsts and 2 seconds, and you got yourself a deal. And Snyder would have probably given it up for Ocho Cinco. But it's a tough organization. It always has been. But Jamar Chase and T. Higgins got it figured out. I will say this about the Cincinnati Bengals this year, Max. They're good enough offensively, like they were last year, to be a double-digit win team and a legitimate Super Bowl contender. They were so bad defensively last year. And if they are going to take a step forward this year defensively, they're not doing it without Trey Hendrickson.
Agreed.
Trey Hendrickson better be on that Cincinnati roster in 2025 if they're going to take advantage of what they have offensively with Joe Burrow and T. Higgins. And, of course, I think pound for pound, along with JJ, the best receiver in the league in Jamar Chase. They better get Trey Hendrickson signed. Have to do that. So I think it eventually happens, but man, this sounds like a guy that does not want to be there. Is going to have a hard time overcoming, the right now what he considers to be burned bridges. Now, money changes, everybody's opinion. And if they come up with $35 million a year to make him the second highest paid player in the league after Myles Garrett, and he's going to be all grins, all smiles, and say, "Tough getting here, but they took care of me." That's a tough one to predict, but I would lean Hendrickson ends up staying in Cincinnati. But a trade still is not on the table. If you get deep into training camp and Hendrickson, and by the way, he sounds like a guy that will stand on some level of principle. Sounds like it. I don't know that for sure. But if he is actually going to hold out, Cincinnati's stubborn enough to go ahead and let him hold out. But maybe, just maybe, as this thing continues to drag, could you get him in August for a second and a fourth next year? Washington doesn't have a second. Keep that in mind. So there would be some competition for Trey Hendrickson. The reporting pre-draft was that the Bengals were asking for too much, but that there were several teams that were interested. And I believe Washington was one of those teams. Are they still interested? Who knows? The other story, man, I mean, it continues to be the biggest, I think, remaining offseason story, if it wasn't top 5 to begin with going in, is Aaron Rodgers going to play in Pittsburgh? They certainly, I think, are behaving as if they believe that he's going to make that decision. I mean, their quarterbacks right now are Mason Rudolph, Will Howard, who they drafted, the Ohio State quarterback, and Skylar Thompson. And you can say all you want. We love Mason Rudolph. He's so good in the locker room. He's great in the meeting room. And apparently he is. He's not a starting quarterback in the NFL. Period. Just isn't. And so your team with, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. What did Pittsburgh go last year? 9-8 again? Make the playoffs?
Of course.
Did
they make the playoffs?
Was it 9-8 or 10-7 though?
9-8.
Yeah, they made the playoffs. They lost to the Ravens. Remember, in the first round?
Yes.
Got blown out.
My God.
How
long that?
10-7. They finished 10-7 last year. So, this from Rudy. Rudy wrote and said, "You talked about Minnesota having a major advantage. It's not a major advantage to have to stay in Europe 2 weeks to play 2 games." So this is in reference to the schedule, which we will be talking a little bit about today and already have. Minnesota reportedly will be playing in back-to-back weeks in Dublin and in Ireland, in Dublin and then in London. End of September, first weekend of October, against Pittsburgh, where, by the way, Art Rooney, Dan Rooney, one of the Rooneys, was the ambassador to Ireland during the Obama years. And so there may be a lot of Steeler fans there. So it may be a bit of a home field advantage. But I suggested yesterday that it's unfair. It's competitively unfair to take Minnesota's road schedule and give them 2 of their road games in neutral site environments. It's just not fair. This year, the NFC has 9 road games, 8 home games. And technically now Minnesota has 8 home games and 7 road games, 7 true road games, because they're going to play in, Ireland and in the UK. And I'm sure that there is some inconvenience and some differences between not being in your facility and not being home. And look, they'll end up being there for definitely a full 2 weeks. They'll get over there on a Monday, get ready for the Pittsburgh game, and then they'll go to the UK and they'll practice in the UK leading into the game against the Browns the following Sunday. I'm sure that there are challenges internationally. I've been told previous years that these international games, which the NFL loves, and who doesn't love a 9:30 a.m. Sunday morning game 5 or 6 times during the season, especially if you're betting the sport. But the teams don't necessarily love them because it is like, a Super Bowl week with the media attention and the media responsibilities and, the fans. And by the way, sometimes field conditions haven't been great, in the UK. Weren't the field conditions in that first game in Berlin? Was that first game in Berlin or Munich? I forget. When the Chiefs played the Dolphins a few years ago. But it was very slippery. So teams don't necessarily love it. There's a lot of distraction. It feels very much like, maybe not a Super Bowl, but maybe like an NFC Championship or AFC Championship week. And Minnesota has to be there for 2 consecutive weeks to play. But I don't know. If I were a Minnesota fan, not having to go to Pittsburgh for a road game this year, not having to go to Cleveland, the Browns aren't going to be very good, I don't think. But being able to play those 2 games on what could be sort of neutral site environments. Minnesota fans, by the way, travel so well. They travel great. So I think it's an advantage for Minnesota. I think it's a disadvantage for the teams that they're competing with in their division and in the conference. I don't think it's fair that they should have 2 less road games than most of the teams in the conference and in their division. I forget, is anybody else in their division playing an international game? Chicago playing an international game? I forget.
I don't think so. Let me check the Schefter tweet again.
I've got the I think I have the whole international schedule. But I think that's a competitive advantage.
Yeah, no NFC North teams.
No NFC North teams in any of the other international games.
Vikings are the only one.
So they get 2 less true road games than Chicago, Green Bay, and Detroit. I'm sorry. Being over in Europe 2 weeks, by the way, not a bad thing, but I understand. And, part of it, too, is when these teams go internationally, their responsibilities personally, family members, friends, everybody wants to go. So now they're into, I got to transport wife, mother-in-law, father-in-law, kids, cousins, good friends. By the time they end up footing the bill for the whole thing, it's outrageous money, probably, right? And now you're asking Minnesota to do it for 2 consecutive weeks. I still think I'd rather have 2 less true road games. That's what I would think. All right. There's some news out there, I guess, related to the Skins schedule beyond what I gave you at the beginning of the show or shortly before the show on X on Twitter, that they're going to host Dallas on Christmas Day on Netflix, probably a 1:00 game, maybe 4:30. It's not the night game Christmas night. That is Denver Chiefs. But I suggested that Washington at Green Bay on Thursday Night Football very early in the season is a good possibility, and at Chiefs on a Monday night at some point during the season is a good bet. Well, apparently there is a report out there or a leak confirming one of those 2 things. I'll let you know which one it is when we come back.
All right. As you just heard, the Washington Commanders will reportedly open their season against the New York Giants and possibly play the Dallas Cowboys on Christmas. The full schedule release show tonight with Linnell Willingham right after Craig Hoffman's show right here on the Team 980. The Nats, they extend their losing streak to 7 games. They fall to Atlanta 5-2. The NBA, Pacers get the closeout over the Cleveland Cavaliers 114-105. Pacers had 5 players with 10 or more points. Tyrese Halliburton led the team with 31. The Nuggets fall to the Thunder 112-105. Not for lack of trying, though. Jokic had 44 points, 15 rebounds, and 5 assists. SGA, on the other side, put up a well-rounded 31, 6, and 7. The Caps, they are off tonight, but they will take on the Hurricanes tomorrow. With their backs against the wall, the Caps are looking to stave off elimination tomorrow night on 106.7 The Fan, pregame at 6:45. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, and hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1, and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that's what's trending.
PGA Golf underway tomorrow. Quail Hollow, Charlotte. Steve Sands, our good friend, will jump on with us. I guarantee you we will talk football, hockey, and anything else that strikes his fancy because he actually likes talking about our teams here locally. Steve, of course, a local with NBC and the Golf Channel. Steve Sands, 5 minutes from now. So I had mentioned, let me just be clear. The Dallas game is sourced, confirmed. I right before the show, I put it out there about 20 minutes before, but I got it confirmed before the show. So Washington is going to play Dallas on Christmas Day on Netflix. And there's been other reporting about Washington opening with the Giants. I had indicated that Washington's going to play Green Bay on Thursday Night Football sometime early in the season. One of those leak sites out there, and I don't know the accuracy of some of these guys. Honestly, I don't. but they are reporting Washington at Green Bay week 2 on Thursday Night Football. That is and was my understanding when I talked about it earlier in the show. When I said early in the season, I was told week 2. I just couldn't get it confirmed. So we'll see. Week 2 at Green Bay. So let's just assume some of this is accurate. At Giants at home, then on the road at Green Bay. And the other thing, as I mentioned earlier, to look for is at Kansas City on Monday Night Football at some point. That would not it would not surprise me if that's a November matchup against Kansas City. It's sweeps month. That feels like I thought Kansas City and Washington would play on Sunday night or Monday night, and it's going to be Monday night, I'm pretty sure. So there you go. Some schedule update. We'll keep you posted all morning long on anything that comes in that's official. But right now, what we know for sure is we know Madrid on November 16th. We know Philadelphia on December 20th. And we know Dallas at home on Christmas Day. What we feel strongly about is Giants in the season opener, at Green Bay week 2 on Thursday Night Football. And at some point during the season, my guess is at some point during November at Kansas City on Monday Night Football. And just so you know, it wouldn't surprise me if that's a short week follow-up to a long-distance trip. And they only have one of them, and that's to LA to face the Chargers. We'll see how that part of the schedule breaks out. Steve Sands next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app. Second major of the year gets underway tomorrow at Quail Hollow in Charlotte, North Carolina. Our good friend Steve Sands is with us. Steve, of course, with the Golf Channel and with NBC. But also Steve is a local and would much prefer, I'm sure, to talk about whether or not the Caps can bounce back from the 3-1 deficit. Or, I don't know, are you into schedule talk or not? You know how much I'm into it. Are you into it? I forget if we've had these conversations before.
It's arguably my favorite of all of your podcasts and all of your bits is the mock schedule. I think it's fantastic. I love it. And congratulations on getting the Madrid game right. And by the way, now that KC is going to Dallas on Thanksgiving, I do think that Packer Christmas Day game is alive. So you might be you haven't
been listening. You haven't been listening.
Oh, no.
I actually think I was the one that broke the news about an hour and a half ago.
The Giants?
Washington is hosting Dallas on Christmas Day.
It is?
Yeah.
Oh,
Washington, Dallas. It'll be on Netflix. Probably a 1:00 game. It might be 4:30, but I'm hearing 1:00. But that was one I was able to not only hear about but get sourced and confirmed. Yeah, Skins Cowboys on Christmas Day.
Oh my gosh, how good is that? I love it.
Yeah, I mean, they've never played on Christmas Day. Obviously, the Skins and Cowboys have played many times on Thanksgiving Day. Christmas Day seemed like a possibility once they got Madrid, and that's they're going to be in a lot of other high-profile spots. I think they're going to play Green Bay Week 2 on Thursday Night Football at Lambeau, and then I think they're going to play a Monday night game at Arrowhead at some point during the season.
Yeah, I think the Arrowhead game and the Lambeau game are going to be big spots. I think I was telling Valerie the other day that you don't get used to those 1:00 kicks anymore on Sunday.
Right.
I said we're going to have 5 or 6, maybe less than that of the 17 games. It's going to be a completely different world for all of us Skins fans.
How do you feel about something that we've talked about the last couple of days? If Trey Hendrickson is available for, let's just say, next year's first, and keep in mind, we're not giving away high first-round picks anymore. They're more likely than not going to be in the bottom third of the pecking order. Would you do it?
One of the reasons the smell test is so successful, Kevin, is because of recency bias. People see what they see the week prior, and then they bet the way they saw what they just saw as opposed to what might be happening the following week. The same thing goes in all of sports when it comes to any type of success. The last thing we all saw was the Eagles dominating the Chiefs with their defensive front and not allowing Mahomes and that offense to do anything. They suffocated that offense. If the Skins can get Myles Garrett, which there was talk of, before he signed with Cleveland, if they can get Hendrickson, go do it, man. A defensive line can disrupt an absolute 60-minute football game like nothing else. Rush the passer, pressure up front is a huge thing in the NFL. Don't give that quarterback or that offense time to do anything. If the Skins can get Hendrickson, I would go get him right now.
I thought you were actually heading in a different direction when you said, contrarian, don't go with recency bias. It's going to be an offensive year. Offensive, teams are going to prevail and an offensive team is going to win the Super Bowl. I still think, and we haven't had this conversation recently, but Steve, for those of you who don't know, is a massive Skins fan, Commanders fan, and has a super sharp football view and opinion. I still think that if Washington were an average to subpar defensive team, that there's a chance they're going to be even better offensively with the additions of Tunsil and, maybe even Connerly Jr. and Deebo Samuel, and that their offense with Jaden and company is still good enough with an average to less than average defense to win 10 or 11 games.
Oh, for sure. I think the offense is going to be there, just like it was, in the second half of last season. If the defense shows up at all, that's why I think you go get Hendrickson. And that's why I think if they had the ability, I remember you and I chatting about this, and I heard your show all the time when the Myles Garrett nonsense was going on. You go get players like that if you are the Commanders. We got to the NFC Championship game. I mean, they had a chance to win the Super Bowl last year, which is insane to think about it. And you add a couple of pieces here, like you said, with Connolly, with Tunsil. I think Tunsil was an amazing pickup if he stays healthy. And the Debo Samuel piece, if he's got his head screwed on straight, if that defense shows up at all, it's very similar to golf, which I know we're going to talk to at some point. If the putter works out at all for Scotty and Rory, then they're going to be there because they're great ball strikers. So if the defense shows up at all, you know that the offense is going to put up points. And if the defense just does its job a little bit, it's going to give Jaden the chance in the fourth quarter. And as we saw last year, he comes up pretty money each and every time he's in a big spot.
So let's switch to your passion that is ongoing in its biggest games of the year, and that is the Caps and their 3-1 hole against Carolina. Why have they gotten to where they've gotten, and can they extricate themselves from this 3-1 hole and win this series?
They've been outcoached. They've been outplayed. Carolina is very, very good. Rod Brindamore is outstanding. I think Carberry is a good coach, and he's going to be an outstanding coach, but he's not on the level right now, in my opinion, of Rod Brindamore. And also, their system is just really difficult to play. Think of it, if you're a college football fan, like having to play Army, Navy, or Air Force and trying to prepare for them and how challenging that is. The Canes play a different system than every other team in the league, and they've got a lot of experience. They always play well against the Caps for some reason in this regard, in this time of year, and I think the Caps are up against it. But I do think the Caps are going to come out and play well tonight. And win tonight and force a game 6. And then you never know what happens in sports with momentum, but it's been a pretty bad mismatch thus far. And the Caps have looked a little bit spooked actually on the ice. But I think they're good and they're resilient. And I think they step up tonight and play well, whether they win or not, who knows, but I do think they're going to play well tonight. And I actually do think they're going to force a game 6.
If they lose this series, is it a disappointment in terms of, they didn't get it done in the postseason again, or was at least getting out of the first round for the first time in 7 years enough for you?
I think it's never enough. I mean, you always want them to win it all, but I think that they're ahead of schedule, if you will. Kind of like, the way the New York Knicks were constructed over the course of the next couple of seasons to kind of wait out Boston and the contracts that they signed early. I think the Caps last year making the playoffs was a bonus. They got swept by the Rangers, but they weren't even supposed to be, they're supposed to be in the lottery, for goodness sakes. And now this year they've advanced to the second round, and they had a fantastic season with 100 points and the Ovechkin record, the whole thing. But they're ahead of schedule. I think they're actually going to be better next year. They've got some really good pieces. And, puck luck and weird stuff and matchups, who knows what's going to happen. But it's been a very, very good season, and they're certainly ahead of schedule. The Patricks have done a fabulous job constructing this team, and they'll do an even better job in the offseason to get even more pieces to make them better.
All right, let's talk some golf. PGA Championship starts tomorrow. I know you guys have had the rain all week there. What is that going to do to the course? Is it going to be a factor? Are they going to be ready to play tomorrow? Tell me about that to start.
I was out with our guys, Scott and Steve, last night, and we were talking about how wet the golf course is. And Dave Fleming was there, one of the voices of the San Francisco Giants, who's also going to be on the call for ESPN this week. He was out with us as well. They were saying every step you took, Kevin, in the fairway, water would be coming up out of the ground. I'm not talking about just squishy. I'm talking about water coming up out of the ground. So it's going to be a long, long golf course. It's already long, but the weather and the amount of rain they've received here in Charlotte the last couple of days has made this place even longer. But it also makes it wider, which means that if you are an errant driver of the golf ball and you normally are in the rough or in the pine straw or the trees, you might find yourself on the right or left side of the fairways because the ball's not going to bound or bounce so far because it's such a soft ground right now. I think it favors the bombers. It favors the guys who can drive the golf ball really well. And, man, that's got Scotty and Rory and Bryson written all over it, doesn't it? I mean, I'm going to go with some other guys off the board, but if you're looking at it right now, the way the golf course is playing, it's playing perfectly into the hands of those three guys.
You know, everybody understands that follows golf that basically anybody can win on any given week. But are we at a point in this sport right now where Rory and Scotty, Scheffler and McIlroy, for those of you who don't follow the sport, are head and shoulders above the next tier of golfers?
I think so. I think that Scotty and Rory, Scotty just won the CJ Cup by 8 shots, dominating performance. McIlroy's already won. Yeah, exactly. Insane. McIlroy's already won 3 times this year, including a Players and the Masters, where he won the career Grand Slam. I think they are far and away the 2 best players in the world. You know, Xander, Ludwig Oberg, these players are Justin Thomas, these players are great players. But I don't think they're playing on the level right now that Rory and Scotty are. Justin Thomas is close. Bryson DeChambeau has played some good golf, but with LIV versus the PGA Tour, it's kind of hard, Kevin, to judge, although he steps up in these big events, as we saw at the Masters, as we saw last year at Pinehurst, where he actually did cross the finish line and won a major. I think that it's Scotty and Rory and the field right now. But as you said, any of these guys can go out there and win this week. A whole number of players can win this week because it's just a different type of sport. It's not mano-a-mano. It's not match play. It's not one game. It's 4 days. But yes, Scotty and Rory have separated themselves for sure from the other players in the field.
I was watching some of the press conferences yesterday, and I was watching Scheffler in particular. By the way, I like him. I think he's thoughtful. Yeah. I think he gives great answers. Is he generally thought of that way by you guys?
Oh yeah. He's terrific. He's a terrific guy. He's smart. He's thoughtful.
Smart.
He doesn't take fools. You know, if you watched yesterday with him, a couple of times where he looked at the reporter and said, "What's the question? Like, what are you asking? I don't understand." You know, like, not in a rude way, but just more in a matter
because he really wants it clarified.
Exactly. He's a bright man for sure.
So he said something yesterday, and I'm wondering if this is actually just a common opinion now in the golf world. He said, "Rory's the greatest driver of the golf ball in the history of the game." Is that true?
I think so. I think. There have been some others who have driven the golf ball as well. Greg Norman in his day was considered the greatest driver of the golf ball, and considering the equipment that Greg was using versus Rory, you can maybe make a case that Greg Norman's driving ability was sharper than Rory's. But if you take distance, accuracy, and that combination, Rory McIlroy, in my opinion, is probably the greatest driver of the golf ball in the history of the sport.
Does Rory, I'm just curious, I don't know the answer to this. Is he more comfortable drawing the ball or cutting or fading the ball?
Drawing the ball, which is why everybody thought he would do so well at Augusta all these years.
Right.
And it took him a long time to get to the finish line, but he did get there. And that's the reason that everybody has always thought for years that, Augusta works out perfectly for Rory McIlroy because he draws the ball right to left. That's one of the reasons he's won here 4 times in his career. And this place kind of looks like Augusta. It's got the pine straw and the trees. And Johnny Harris is the founder of the club. He's a member at Augusta. It's done on purpose here in Charlotte at the Quail Hollow Club. And McIlroy has won here 4 times, very comfortable here. And the main reason is because he's able to bust his driver and draw it with his shape that he likes right to left, hit it high, hit it far, and then give yourself opportunities to score. You can score on this golf course if you're in the fairway. If you hit it in the rough, you're going to find yourself in a lot of trouble.
Talking to Steve Sands, of course, NBC and the Golf Channel. So let's just stick on Rory because he is a massive story in the sport and was a massive story last month just in sports overall. With the win at Augusta, is there a feeling that the floodgates have opened and that he's going to go on a tear here?
It's funny. Van Pelt and I were talking about this last night. It's either one. It's one or the other. People think, okay, he's now going to have no burden on his back and the burden has been lifted and everything's just going to open up from here. And the other side is, well, now that he's achieved the career Grand Slam, these things are really hard to win. Maybe that's going to be it. I happen to think it's somewhere in the middle. I do not think he's going to go out and start winning like 8, 9, 10 majors now, although he could because he's that great. But I also don't think he's going to take his foot off the gas. He's a hard worker. He is someone who cares about greatness, about being great, about winning majors, and he's in his mid-30s, for goodness sakes. He's right in the prime of his career. He might have an 11-year run here that he just didn't have for the last 11 years when he didn't win one major, and it could even out over the course of those 22 years that he wins the right number as far as, as far as looking at his resume. So I think personally, this golf course is so good for him, Kevin, that he is going to be in contention this week unless something bizarre happens. Oakmont is perfect for him, and so is Royal Portrush, where he's from, 20 minutes from his home in Hollywood, Northern Ireland. So I think he's going to win another major this year, and I think it could very well be this week, which could set up for an amazing U.S. Open at Oakmont in Pittsburgh next month if he wins the first 2 major championships. That hasn't been done since Spieth in 2015 when he won at Chambers Bay after winning the Masters in 2015. But yeah, I think the burden's been lifted, Kevin. But whether or not that translates into winning more majors, we're just going to have to wait and see. It's just such an odd sport in that regard. You've got to bring your game to a major. You don't find your game. So sometimes he has to find it. Sometimes he's bringing it. This week he's bringing it, which means he's going to have a great chance to win.
I think I read this morning, and I'm looking for it right now, but I think it's Tiger, Jack, Palmer, Spieth, and I forget who the 5th one was. Only 5 players in the history of the game have won the first 2 majors of the year. I mean, if he were to win here, that would create unbelievable bedlam and anticipation for Oakmont and the U.S. Open next month.
You know who's rooting for that, Kevin?
Who?
My employer.
Of course. Yeah, no, it'd be massive for sports. Here it is. It's Ben Hogan. Hogan's the 5th.
Yeah.
Hogan, Palmer, Nicholas Woods, and Spieth. Of course, Jordan Spieth, if he were to contend and win here, then he would actually win and complete the career major Grand Slam. You don't expect him to win here, do you?
I do not. He's never really performed well on this golf course. He is driving the ball beautifully, but he's just not putting well. And I just don't think he's going to do it this week. Looking down the road at the PGA Championship, I think he could pick it off in certain places. But this golf course, for whatever reason, does not suit his eye. Same with Scotty Scheffler, by the way. He has not, ever played on this golf course. So who knows what's going to happen with him. But Spieth has never really performed well on Quail Hollow. And I don't expect him to win the career Grand Slam this week.
Do the players, now that we've, Oak Hill recently, I forget some of the others, would they prefer to play? I know that they loved Philly cricket last week, and not that could host necessarily a PGA Championship, but do they prefer the old courses, the legendary courses versus the newer courses like Quail Hollow? Like, what is the view of players playing a major at Quail Hollow?
They love Quail Hollow because over the years they've gotten to know it as a venue that was leading towards hosting majors. It hosted the 2017 PGA. Justin Thomas won. It hosted the President's Cup a few years ago. They loved Quail Hollow. There are very few PGA Tour venues year in, year out that could host a major championship in the eyes of the players. But this is certainly one of them. And they, by the way, to answer your question on the other side, they love the old school courses. They would, they love going to Marion and Shinnecock and Wingfoot and all those guys, Oakmont, all those guys, Pinehurst, along with going to play places like Pebble Beach, which is obviously fabulous. And Quail Hollow is certainly a worthy PGA Championship venue, just like our backyard at Congressional in D.C., outside D.C. That's a worthy place. 3 U.S. Opens, Ken Venturi, Ernie Els, and Rory McIlroy all are Hall of Fame. Rory's not in yet because he's not eligible because he's too young, but they're going to host a PGA Championship at Congressional and also a Ryder Cup at Congressional in the late
Yeah.
2030s. So, they love the old school golf courses. By the way, I'll be there next week for the senior PGA, Kevin. Hopefully we can grab a drink or grab
I know,
dinner.
senior PGA there. I mean, it's not the old line, tree-lined Congressional Blue like it once was.
Oh my gosh, no.
But it's
what
that's
they,
another
what are
subject
they
for
doing?
another
What
day.
are they doing? What are they doing at these golf courses
I
where
know.
you have these trees? Come on now, don't do that.
Yeah. All right, let's get to your thoughts and picks. Who are you picking to win it?
I think McIlroy's going to win. He's won here 4 times. Loves the golf course, and he also, if you remember, 2011 at Congressional. Speaking of Congressional, he loves soft golf courses.
Yeah.
And because of all the rain, it's been soft. I do think Scotty should play well here. Like I said, he's never played a stroke play event here. Played in the President's Cup a few years ago, but never played a stroke play event here at Quail Hollow. Justin Thomas is someone you have to look at because he's won here and because he just won recently and he's playing some great, great golf. If you're going to go off the board a little bit, I would go with Sepp Straka and Tyrrell Hatton. If you're looking to go way off the board there.
Straka
with
just
some
having
picks.
come off that win last weekend.
Straka with a win. He's a baller, Kevin. Man, that kid can play. And he's starting to get the confidence and the moxie. It's almost like if he knew he was as good as the other guys knew he is, that kind of thing. And he's starting to realize that. And Tyrrell Hatton, I think, will play well here this week as well. But I think it's going to be top heavy. I think it's going to be McIlroy, Thomas, Scheffler, and then those other guys I talked about a little off the board.
And you think because of how wet it is, you got to be able to hit the ball a long way. So I'm assuming that you would not love Denny this week, McCarthy.
I think it's a tough spot for Denny. Now, Denny is a guy who's got a ton of heart and a ton of game, but this might not be kind of like matchups in hockey or the NBA or the NFL. This probably isn't a good matchup for Denny this week. I would love to see him contend, and he has contended in big events, but I don't see it here this week.
Being able to go at pins here early, are you seeing a very low winning score?
I think
go?
Wait till you see tomorrow morning, Kevin. The ball doesn't move. I mean, the ball's not rolling because it's just so wet. So
it's playing longer, but they're going to be able to go at pins.
Correct. So I think you're going to see some really low scores, and you're going to see some really high scores as well.
Yeah. All right. Rory, if he can do it this weekend, that would set up just unbelievable anticipation for Marion. Which
Big
I'm
time.
sorry for Oakmont.
No, Oakmont. It'd be
Oakmont.
It'd be outrageous.
Marion, Philly, Oakmont, Western PA.
Correct.
All
Correct.
Right.
Oakmont has hosted more USGA events than any other place. It'll be fun next month, but this week will be a good one. It's Quail Hollow is a worthy place, and the PGA is going to be a fun. It should be a really good week.
And look, this is where you get PGA professionals, and occasionally you'll get one to play really well. Somebody Scheffler was talking about this, and I've read this elsewhere that among the PGA professionals out there are guys that could easily be on the tour and playing at a high level. They've just chosen not to lead that life, right?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, some of those guys can really, really play. They all can really play in comparison to people like me and you. But in comparison to the tour players, if these guys actually tried to hone their craft to the point where they could play regularly on the PGA Tour, I think there are at least a couple of them who could succeed for sure. There's some really, really good PGA professionals out there who just decided for whatever reason to go a different route.
All right. Where can we watch you? What's the schedule the next few days?
Oh, man. Golf Channel's all over it. This is CBS and ESPN week, so we don't have it.
Scott's calling the first 2 days, right? Did I lose you?
Yeah, I think the call just dropped out.
Oh, okay. Steve, thank you for that. Appreciate it. But he'll be all over the Golf Channel all weekend long. And remember, they've got, some of the early morning coverage, I think, as well. Should be, I don't know. These majors are always awesome. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app. Don't forget, we now stream on the YouTube ESPN 980, the Team 980 YouTube page. Subscribe and like us when you get there.
How's your Spanish? How's your Spanish?
It could definitely use some work. So that's
Okay.
probably a great reason for me to have some extra time
Yes.
before heading over to Madrid, which is going to be a really cool experience for everybody.
That is Dan Quinn talking about, potentially the Madrid game, right? From a few days ago. Or no, it was Rich
Eisen yesterday.
Rich Eisen yesterday, yeah. Quinn was on with Rich Eisen yesterday. A little bit later on in the show, we'll play some of that sound. You guys are all sending me a lot of links to leaks about the schedule. Some of them are probably right. Some of them may not be. I don't know. I can only tell you what I know. As I mentioned before the show and then at the top of the show, Washington, Dallas, Christmas Day in Landover. More likely than not, a 1:00 start, maybe a 4:30 start, not Christmas night. That appears to be locked in with Chiefs and Broncos. But that is going to be a Netflix game. Cowboys, Washington, Christmas Day. And then I've been told that Washington at Green Bay on Thursday Night Football early in the season. Somebody else leaked out it's week 2. I had heard that it was week 2, just couldn't get that confirmed. But Washington at Green Bay Thursday Night Football. And then I think we'll see when the schedule comes out at some point, Washington at Kansas City on Monday Night Football, maybe followed by a West Coast trip to the Chargers. So we'll see how that plays out. But in terms of what we know new, in addition to Madrid against the Dolphins and the Eagles on December 20th, Cowboys, Washington, Christmas Day, and Washington at Green Bay, week 2 on Thursday Night Football has been leaked. I know that it is very early in the season for sure against the Packers on Thursday Night Football, and look for Washington and Kansas City to play on Monday Night Football. So it looks like, did the third Christmas Day game get leaked or not?
I think there were 2 that were put out there.
Mm-hmm.
And we were us in Dallas was kind of the one that was looming to be released.
All right. Yeah. All right. We'll figure it out.
Pulling it up.
Wanted to read this from, hold on, where is it? This comes from Dan. Dan writes, subject heading, rigged NBA lottery. Kevin, you my man, but you are naive to think that the NBA lottery is not completely rigged. Yeah, I am in the camp of it is not rigged for a lot of reasons that I expressed yesterday, and I'll express them again today. By the way, sometimes these conversations annoy me in terms of people being so convinced. And this is one of those where people are totally convinced. And could the Patrick Ewing 1985, when David Stern was basically managing almost by himself the draft lottery, could that have been rigged? Yeah, I'm not saying that one wasn't rigged. Just remember, Tom says this all the time. For a conspiracy to be right, or for people to keep a secret with so many people involved, that means these people can't say anything ever. It's impossible for that to happen. And there are a lot of people involved, but there are other reasons for it. But let me read the entirety of Dan's email. Kevin, you're my man, but you're naive to think that the NBA lottery is not completely rigged. Check out these numbers and tell me if you still feel that way. Since 1993, 6 teams have won the NBA draft lottery with a 3% chance or less. 2024 Hawks at 3%, 2011 Clippers traded to Cavs, 2025 Mavs, 2008 Bulls, 1993 Magic, 2014 Cavs. That means that 20% of the time over the last 31 years, a team with odds of 3% or less has won the lottery. Would you love to know what the probability of that happening is? LeBron going to Cleveland, Rose going to Chicago, and now Flag replacing Luka is not a fluke. 3% doesn't happen 20% of the time. It's just math. Actually, that's not stats and probability math, Dan, all due respect. These are independent events. But beyond that, look, I mean, let's just go with the obvious, which is Do you understand what the NBA makes a year? Do you know that they signed an 11-year, $76 billion television contract last year? This league is so swimming in money right now, despite what many of you think of the NBA. And look, I feel that way about the regular season product. I think it's a terrible product, the NBA in the regular season. And All-Star Weekend has turned into, a mockery. But it doesn't matter. They've got $76 billion from Amazon, from NBC, and from ESPN Disney, okay, for the next 11 years for their product. Do you think that anybody in their right mind looking at the risk reward evaluation would put that $76 billion at risk? Because if they were to rig the draft lottery, the reward is incremental revenue because Luka's in LA and maybe Cooper Flagg's in Dallas. You're talking about maybe millions of dollars. 76 billion with a B. And if they were to get caught, and with as many people that would have to be quiet about the rigging of the draft lottery, this is not mom and pop. You've got Ernst & Young in there. You think Ernst & Young, one of the big 6 accounting firms, is going to go in there and say, hey, we got a great business. We've been around for, 90 years, but we really like the idea of participating in the rigging of the NBA draft lottery. That'd be great for our business. Secondly, what comes out of the risk part after you contemplate the reward part, which is a peanuts fraction of what the overall risk is, you would put those television deals into jeopardy, and people would go to prison. Conspiracy and fraud on a very high level, because we're not talking about, conspiracy and fraud at like a dollar store. The commissioner himself would have to be in on it. He makes $10-12 million a year. You think he's going to prison and rigging the draft lottery? Because, it would be better if Luka were in LA and Cooper Flagg were in Dallas instead of Charlotte or Washington or Utah. You got to be insane to believe that these individuals, many of them, would actually conspire to rig the NBA draft lottery with the risk reward equation. It's so lopsided. Thirdly, back to Dan's email. Look, I went through this yesterday. For those that don't understand it, when you have 14 teams that are eligible for the number 1 pick, number 2 pick, number 3 pick, and number 4 pick, and that's what you're drawing for. I don't know if anybody's seen the actual video of the operation. I don't even know how you would rig it. I guess weighted ping pong balls. I don't know. They get sucked up before others do. I guess. I'm sure there's some, but it's a process with, every team in the room, Ernst & Young in the room, multiple league members in the room. These ping pong balls apparently are, weighed, and they go through a process. Then they go into a ping pong ball machine and they get pulled, sucked up one at a time. And then they let them mix around for 10 seconds in between pulling them. I don't know how you'd even do it. I'm sure there's a way, though. But for those that don't understand the process, there are basically 14 ping pong balls numbered 1 through 14 that they pull 4 of for each drawing for the first pick, second pick, third pick, and fourth pick. With 14 ping pong balls pulling 4 numbers, there is exactly 1,001 possible combinations. And every team is assigned a certain number of combination numbers. And the way the draft lottery works now, the 3 worst teams in the league, rather than the worst team, second worst team, and third worst team, because they wanted to prevent tanking at the end of the year. So they made the 3 worst teams' chances equal. And so they get, out of the 1,000 combinations, they get 140 of those 1,000 combinations. It's 1,001. They actually exclude 11, 12, 13, 14 is a combination just to get to 1,000. So if 11, 12, 13, 14 popped up, they would actually exclude and eliminate that as a drawing possibility, just so everybody understands that. So the 3 worst teams get 140 chances out of 1,000. That's 14% for the first overall pick. The 4th worst team gets 125. It's 12.5%. It keeps going down until the 14th team in the draft has 5 combinations out of the 1,000. So they've got a 0.5% chance of pulling number 1. Now, I'm giving you that just so that you understand, like for the Wizards, they finished with the 2nd worst record. So they have a 14% chance of the first pick. They have a 13.42% of getting the 2nd pick. They've got a 12.75% of getting the 3rd pick and 11.97% of getting the 4th pick. They have a 27.84% opportunity to get the 5th pick. Why is that? Because you draw for the top 4 and then it goes in order of worst record to best record of the remaining teams that didn't finish in the top 4. So their chances of getting the 5th pick were the best at 27.84%, and their percent chance of getting the 6th pick was the 2nd best odds for them at 20.02%. And they actually ended up getting the 2nd best odds for them, the 6th pick overall. Sucks because they certainly had, basically a 52.2% chance of finishing in the top 4 and a 47.8% chance of finishing in the 5th and 6th. But, near coin flip there. And so they ended up with the wrong side of the coin flip. And not even their best chance on the wrong side of the coin flip, their 2nd best chance. So just so everybody understands, the Wizards' chances of getting like the first pick weren't 50-50 or 75. It's 14%. So there was an 86% chance they weren't. And there was a 48% chance, a 47.8% chance, so nearly a 48% chance that they wouldn't end up in the top 4, that they would end up at 5 or 6. And the best chance was 5th, and the 2nd best chance was 6th. Now, back to Dan's thing. Here's where, like, just the idea of listing players and teams and, like, why Dallas and not Philadelphia if it was being rigged? Okay, because it was the quid pro quo for Luka Doncic. Okay, why didn't they just trade the Luka to the 76ers? And do it that way? I mean, the Lakers are the highest profile team in the league. I understand that. Okay, I get it. But like, a couple of years ago, when Zion Williamson was the last, Victor Wembanyama, Zion Williamson, prior to this draft with Cooper Flagg, were the last like number one guarantees that were potential franchise changers. Why did they let Zion Williamson go to New Orleans? Because of the Chris Paul trade? Seriously? You think Zion Williamson to New Orleans was in the best interest, long-term interest of the league if he was going to be the next face of the league? Come on, man. You know better than that. No one wanted Zion Williamson to end up in New Orleans. By the way, for years, why didn't Kobe Bryant play LeBron James in the finals ever, when that's all anybody wanted to see for many years? LeBron versus Kobe in the NBA finals. Never happened. The league's so rigged. Zion Williamson to New Orleans. I mean, last year, the 3% chance, the Hawks, are you just trying to cover your tracks? We're going to give another low. We know next year is going to be Dallas, Luka, the whole thing, because that trade is orchestrated for right around the holidays or whenever it happened. So let's make sure that everybody understands that somebody with a very low percentage can finish number 1. We'll give it to the Hawks, and they can draft Zachary Rissache. I don't know, man. San Antonio for Wembanyama. I mean, San Antonio is a good NBA franchise. It's not a great NBA market when it comes to, how many eyeballs tune in to their games. There's just a lot that, I'd go back to Zion as number one. Zion was the one where everybody was counting down the days. Who's going to win this lottery and get Zion Williamson? New Orleans? Come on. You don't think in that particular draft they wouldn't have preferred the Knicks get Zion Williamson? They were in the lottery. The Lakers were in the lottery that year because they had a traded pick. I guess that was with New Orleans. So the Lakers were in it too. You don't think that those teams, the Bulls, were in the lottery that year? I mean, there were much better opportunities than New Orleans for Zion Williamson. Turns out Zion's injuries have really kind of prevented the career from taking off. When he's been healthy, he's been pretty good. Yeah, I start with risk reward. The risk is so great and the reward is just not worth the risk, even close to it. It just isn't. So I understand. And, statistics and probability, 100. If you took it in college, you understand that the 1 point, what was Dallas's percentage again? 1.8%.
Yep. 1.8.
It's not 0. So it can happen. It's not likely, but it can happen. And it did. All right. Coming up at noon, Tommy's going to jump on with me. Rob Manfred basically made Pete Rose eligible to be voted on for the Hall of Fame. So what does that mean? Will he end up in the Hall of Fame? Tommy will join us at 12. Something Dan Quinn said to Rich Eisen yesterday when we come back.
All right, the Washington Commanders will reportedly open their season against the New York Giants, and Kevin Sheehan has reported that the Commanders will play the Dallas Cowboys on Christmas. Full schedule release show will be tonight with Linnell Willingham right after the Craig Hoffman show right here on the Team 980. The Nats extend their losing streak to 7 games. They fall to Atlanta 5-2. The NBA, the Pacers close out the Cleveland Cavaliers 114-105. Pacers with 5 players in 10 or more points. Tyrese Halliburton led them with 31. The Nuggets fall to the Thunder 112-105. Not for a lack of trying, though. Nikola Jokic had 44 points, 15 rebounds, 5 assists. And SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, on the other side for Oklahoma, put up a well-rounded 31, 6, and 7. The Caps, they are off tonight, but they will take on the Carolina Hurricanes tomorrow with their backs against the wall. The Caps are looking to stave off elimination right here on 106.7 The Fan. Lars Eller will draw out of the lineup, and Connor McMichael will move to center. Radish and Leonard will play in their spots. Pregame at 6:45 on 106.7 The Fan tomorrow night with Katie Florio, John Walton, and Ben Sabrin. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open up the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1 and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that's what's trending.
Dan Quinn was on the Rich Eisen show yesterday. He was asked a few questions about Jaden Daniels, but this was a question asking Dan Quinn, what makes Jaden so special?
Coming off of one of the most unicorny, which I know is not really a word, I just might have phrased it.
Yeah,
or coined
we'll go
it.
with it.
I mean, let's do
Yeah.
it. One of the most
Yeah.
unicorn-like seasons I've ever seen. Walk me and the fans of your team through it, Dan.
I think number one, we wanted to, as you're starting to, a new team together, Rich, it was really about the competition at the start of it. And Marcus Mariota is here, who is just an absolute fantastic teammate. So going to battle to make sure, hitting all the markers along the way. We were wanted to make sure that we weren't going to miss one step along his development. And then early on, you saw like he was really ready for these competitive moments, and the amount of work that he put in to prepare himself for those, that was important. Our team grew closer and we grew stronger, Rich, as the season went on. And as you know very well, that end of the season team should beat the hell out of your early season team. And we would be able to do that just by our improvement, the way we went after it. But he was at the very front of it. He and his teammates have really put it in, more timing, more connection. And the more and more you do that, the better that you go. But there's a lot of belief in him amongst his teammates. And that's because he does put that work in and he goes to prove it, which I love about him.
We've heard Dan Quinn say, going back to last summer, this is going to be a competition. And, he's got to hit these markers along the way, these milestones. And obviously he hit them and he ended up being the starting quarterback. On some level, like I want to call major BS, like there was never a chance that he wasn't going to start the season. But he is stuck with it for so much of last summer during the season. And here he's even mentioning it, going back to not answering what makes Jaden so special, but going back to, we put him through a legitimate competition. He had to hit these milestones. We had Marcus Mariota there. Marcus Mariota has started games in the NFL. He's been a big time starter, in a couple of his seasons in the NFL. I'm actually believing him that if he didn't hit these markers along the way, there would have been a chance that he would have perhaps maybe sat the opener at Tampa. That can't be true. I mean, maybe it was, we're going to give him these milestones. We feel really confident he will hit them. He'll be our starter opening day. But if he doesn't, we got to have a conversation. But I guess they never felt like he wasn't going to hit them. And I don't even know what the milestones were. Maybe they were easy. Maybe like color between the lines here on the second day of training camp. And if you aren't too far outside the lines, you've passed milestone number one. I love to hear Dan Quinn talk about those early days last summer, because he was consistent then and he's still consistent that it was a competition and that Jaden needed to hit these markers, these milestones, for them to have been comfortable enough to have named him the starter. There's no milestones this summer, that's for sure. When we come back, the big news out of Major League Baseball, Rob Manfred making Pete Rose and others actually now Hall of Fame eligible. A Hall of Fame baseball voter, Tom Lavero, joins me next. So yesterday, baseball commissioner Rob Manfred removed Pete Rose, Shoeless Joe Jackson, and other deceased players from Major League Baseball's permanently ineligible list for the Hall of Fame. Tom Lavero joins me right now. Tommy is a Hall of Fame voter. How long have you been a Hall of Fame voter?
I've been a Hall of Fame voter for about 23 years.
23 years.
Yes.
Before we get to what this means in the process and what will happen and will Pete Rose actually be in the Hall of Fame, was there recent pressure on Manfred or recent discussion around this topic for him to do something about it?
Well, I'd say so. President Trump came out and said that he thought that Rose should be reinstated and should be put in the Hall, and actually said he was going to issue a pardon for him for his tax evasion conviction that he had. And I think you have to weigh that as maybe part of the thinking going into the timing of Commissioner Manfred making this announcement.
Okay. So what happens next? Is this something where the next time you vote, he'll be on the ballot?
No.
How does it work?
No. The baseball writers will not vote on this. The way the system is set up now, his eligibility on the baseball writers ballot, the timing is long past. You're on the ballot for 10 years. After you're 5 years out of baseball, then you're on the ballot for 10 years as long as you get, like, I think 5% of the vote each year or something like that. Then it goes to various committees for consideration. So the baseball writers will not get a chance to vote on Pete Rose. It will go to two committees, one called Historical Overview Committee, a group that conducts an initial screening and would probably just go ahead and, pass, absolutely okay Pete Rose. And then a second is called the Era Committee, made up of Hall of Famers, executives, and veteran media members. And that would be the final vote for it.
How many
it'll
people
never
are on
be
that
before
committee?
the writers. It's 16 members on that committee.
16. Are you going to be
Yes.
a part of that committee?
No, I'm not. I'm
Okay.
not. I'm
And
not
so
part of that committee.
they're the ones that will vote on Pete Rose getting into the Hall of Fame. It won't go that if they vote yes, he's in, or if they vote yes, then he's on your ballot.
No, if they vote yes, he's in.
He's in. So
Yeah.
you won't have a vote on this.
No.
Oh, that's interesting. I thought I read something where I thought Tony in particular said something like this will end up being an MLB. The voters will decide this, but they won't. A committee.
No, they
will.
won't. Yes.
So who makes up that committee again?
Well, I mean, it's members who are in the Hall of Fame, players who are in the Hall of Fame, Major League Baseball executives, retired executives, maybe current executives, and some media members, longtime media members, veteran media members.
Well, isn't that going to be a big
handful.
deal? It's almost like a jury pool selection in terms of the 16 people that get to vote on this.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's the same committee. They're not picking a special committee just for this vote.
Oh, they're
This
not. So
committee-
that committee's
No.
already established.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you
Yeah,
have a
that committee's
sense on
already
how they'll vote?
established. Well, look, I can't fathom them not voting for Pete Rose to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. There were a lot of Hall of Famers who had ill will towards Pete and felt that he really put the game at risk, because they're brought up through the system believing that gambling is the one cardinal sin that you can't commit. So, his numbers are overwhelming. His presence in the game is overwhelming. And I just can't fathom the committee not voting Pete Rose in at this point. I mean, there's never been a chance for anyone to vote on him because once baseball banned him, the Hall of Fame made the decision not to allow anyone banned from baseball ever up on any kind of vote or any kind of ballot.
Are you allowed to write in somebody that's not on the ballot?
For the committee, I don't believe so. I don't know.
No. As a voter over the years.
No, you're not. No, you're not allowed
Okay.
to write in your own. You're sent a ballot with the names of the people who are eligible for it, and then you fill it out and send it back in.
Okay.
It's all
We're
done
talking
very
to
old
Tommy.
school through the U.S. mail.
Right. We're talking to Tommy. Tommy votes on the Hall of Fame ballot every year, but this is not going to be a Hall of Fame voter writer decision. This is going to be 16 members on what they call the Era Committee. When will that happen? Do you know the time frame for them to vote?
I would think it might happen by next year, 2026. No later than 2027. I would think probably by 2026 it'll happen.
I mean, in what we do over the years, this sports talk forum, it's your part-time gig, not your full-time gig because you're an actual writer. Has there been a topic, Pete Rose Hall of Fame, yes or no, that has been an easier go-to and maybe a more often go-to, especially during non-football season in markets like ours? I mean, I can't remember, honestly, the last time the two of us did it, but it has been a raging debate now for, since what, 91, 90, whenever he was banned?
Yes, 91.
Look,
I think sports talk radio is going to come to a halt now that if Pete Rose winds up in the Hall of Fame.
I think we can talk NFL schedule for several days.
True, but you're right. You usually sometime in July, mid-July, the Pete Rose, should he be in the Hall of Fame, was always a hot topic. And there were people who in the spotlight who would bring it up. Jimmy Carter was a big advocate of Pete Rose and would periodically make pronouncements that he should be in the Hall of Fame, and that would revive it all over again. And, I don't understand. I understand the love for what Rose represented in baseball. It wasn't just his numbers. It was the way he played and the passion for the way he played. But, I mean, to plant your flag on this guy, of all guys, I mean, this was a bad guy.
So over the years, just, refresh my memory, because I remember most of what you say, but not everything, fortunately. What was your position on Rose? Would you have voted for him had he been on the ballot?
I would not have voted for him. If he had been banned from baseball, but still on the ballot, I would not have voted for him. I mean, I do believe. I mean, there's no excuse for what he did. People. I mean, here's what people forget. It was proven that Pete Rose bet on the Reds. People used to say for years he never bet on his team. Okay, but he did. And it was proven in a Dowd investigation, and ESPN Outside the Lines. An investigation found documents that showed he bet on the Reds while he played and while he managed. Well, people would say he never bet against the Reds, but I think you can understand this. Okay, he didn't bet every game against on the Reds. Okay, so while Pete Rose decided, to his mafia bookie, I'm going to lay a bet on my team today. Okay, but the next day he decides not to bet on his team.
Right.
By just doing that, he's telling people within his world that he doesn't think his team's going to win the next day.
Yeah, I think that one of the things about the conversation about betting on sports, and people say, well, who cares if they bet on, other sports or they bet on their own team? You just mentioned one of the, outputs of that, which is, well, what happens when they don't bet on their own team? Does that mean that the other, betting on the other team is a good bet? But the issue has always been gambling being insidious, gambling being addictive, and having a player or a coach or a manager end up getting into, debt, and then being vulnerable to settle that debt by, essentially throwing a game. Whether they bet on their own team or bet on other sports, if they get into debt and they owe the book a bunch of money, there's an easy way because of their position to get out of that. And that's always been the risk of sports gambling with players and coaches and managers and people in the game. It's not necessarily, do they know anything about this particular game, which they do on occasion. It's what happens if they actually get into debt and the book says, well, we can wipe the slate clean if you guys, make sure that you don't win by more than 4 tomorrow. And that's where it comes in. So,
Look, one of the biggest historical moments in baseball was the 1919 World Series, where the White Sox, threw the series against the Cincinnati Reds for gamblers. Right. Okay, that nearly destroyed the game. And in the early part of the 20th century, betting on baseball and gambling among players was a major problem. And particularly in World War II, World War I. I wasn't around then, obviously, but I've read stories that said because many horse tracks were closed during World War I, because horses were being used in the war. Okay, gamblers then started to flock to baseball and started using baseball, to get their gambling fix off. So, this was something that almost destroyed the game.
Is the shoeless Joe Jackson 1919 Black Sox scandal, what are his chances? The same as Rose's?
Well, I think he's been a more
through the World Series.
Yeah, he's been a more sympathetic figure.
Why?
At least, because in the media, like in the movie 8 Men Out, he's seen as kind of an innocent guy who went along with it initially, but then wanted out and had a tremendous World Series. I put up tremendous stats. It did nothing to indicate that he contributed to throw it, but he was involved in the planning and initially agreed to be part of the group. But a lot of the literature, a lot of the lore has been sympathetic to Jackson as more than a victim than anything else. I think that's a little bit twisted, but I think that's going to help him in terms. Remember, Field of Dreams was in part one of the main characters was Joe Jackson.
Yeah,
so he's come off in history as a sympathetic figure.
Talking to Tommy, that movie 8 Men Out is great, and that era, like I think I read once that, even by today's dollar value, what they ended up getting paid was like peanuts to throw the World Series. Like it wasn't a lot. Something like $2,500, which might equate to like $40,000 or $50,000 today, or whatever it would be today. All right, so you expect Pete Rose will be in the Hall of Fame, and who will induct him? How will that work? I don't know that you've thought that thing through, but he's gone and didn't get to see this, and he wouldn't have been able to see it because Manfred was very specific that this is a decision based on players who are no longer with us, deceased players. Will no longer be on the permanently ineligible list. Do you agree with what Manfred's done or not?
It's a bit complicated because it diminishes the signal of the line in the sand that this is supposed to be drawn, but it does seem excessive too to punish a guy still after he's left this earth. At least his legacy. But I suspect this is all motivated by President Trump speaking out recently about Pete Rose. So I think baseball will follow through and put him in. So I don't know if I agree with it. I understand it. Look, his family members will probably, be there for the ceremony. I imagine maybe Johnny Bench, who's very prominent in the Hall of Fame, one of Rose's teammates, will be there for the induction. And, look, Pete Rose's family suffered enough being related to Pete Rose when he was alive. At least give them this.
When they put him in as a statue or however they do that for the Baseball Hall of Fame, will there be something that says banned for life for gambling? Has to be, right?
That I would think there has to be, but I would think that would be a source of controversy. But I don't see how you could leave it off the plaque. I would agree.
Yeah.
That has to be on there.
Is he the greatest hitter of all time?
No.
Where does he rank on the list
Sure,
of the greatest
Joe
hitters
Jackson
of all
was
time?
a greater hitter. I'd have to go through the list. Ty Cobb was a greater hitter. Ted Williams,
Cobb.
Tris Speaker, Tony Gwynn, all better hitters. And
Ted
P.
Williams,
Rose. P.
for sure,
Rose was
right.
just determined. He was maybe the most determined hitter.
All right. Thanks for doing this. I guess we'll talk about this tomorrow, too, on the podcast. Too bad you don't get a chance to vote on it. You explained something that I was not aware of. I thought that this would just eventually go to Hall of Fame voters and that you would have a chance. But this is interesting, this era committee. But it sounds to me you think that the driver behind this right now is the president, and they're going to get this done, and he's going to end up in the Hall of Fame.
Look, it's just like many of our conversations, I educated you.
Yes, this one you did, and many others you do too. But very often, I think I've been educated, and then after the fact, I find out that it actually was not totally accurate. Like my mock schedule. I will talk to you later. Thanks for doing this.
Okay, boss.
All right, Tom Lavero, everybody, at Tom Lavero on X and on Twitter. So, what else do we have breaking? I did see that it looks like Minnesota and Detroit is the other Christmas Day game. So we have the 3 Christmas Day games: Washington, Dallas, Minnesota, Detroit, KC, Denver. That would mean that Detroit, Dallas, and Kansas City, right, are all playing on Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Kansas City actually requested, I think, once it became clear that Christmas Day was going to be a given, that the Chiefs wanted to be the Lions and Cowboys of Christmas Day.
Right.
I would not want our team to be that.
No.
I really don't.
Make my Christmases much more stressful.
We'll update some of the latest reporting on Washington's schedule. And you'll hear some of the other things that Dan Quinn said yesterday on the Rich Eisen Show. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com.
When you get the schedule tomorrow, what's the first thing you look for? Your bye week? Is that, or your first week opponent? What do you do when you get
probably the
schedule?
first week opponent first. Are you in the division, out of the division? Because for a long time you've known who you played. So after the draft, you start looking to see what teams have changed significantly. And then I would say after that, then the opener, then what does the next, few weeks layout look like until you get to the bye. But it is a fun day just because it makes it all kind of come into reality where things are. So it's a good topic for coaches and teams for a couple of days. And I think from the media side, it can probably extend a little past that.
Dan Quinn yesterday on with Rich Eisen talking about the first thing he looks for when the schedule breaks. So there have been some new reports just to catch everybody up to speed. If you don't know, the actual schedule in its entirety comes out tonight. We will have a schedule show right here on the Team 980. Linnell will host that from 7 to 10. So right when Craig's show is over, Linnell will step into the seat and take you through schedule release night, where we'll get everything and it will be official when it comes out. We knew going into today, Madrid on November 16th. We knew heading into today, Philadelphia on December 20th at home. Nothing else did we know for sure. I had the news earlier this morning that Washington was going to play Dallas on Christmas Day. That will be a Netflix Christmas Day game at home against the Cowboys. I was told that it's more likely than not the first game of the triple header on Christmas Day. It could be 4:30, but it's definitely not the night game. I would lean towards it being the 1 o'clock game. We had reporting out of New York, a pretty solid source in New York reported earlier this morning that the Giants were going to open up in Washington. So that's another game that looks like there's pretty good consensus or validity around it. JP Finley, our good friend JP, just reported that Washington is going to play Chicago in week 6 on Monday Night Football at home, and they will close the season on the road at Philadelphia. Now, if those two are accurate, it's the latter that's most interesting to me. The idea that Washington won't play Philadelphia until week 16 and then would close 2 out of their last 3 games of the season being against the Eagles. Wow, that's a surprise to me, because one of the reasons I didn't think that they would close with the Eagles this year is because the 2 games are so valuable against each other this year for television. Fox, we knew that one of those games would be on Fox. The December 20th game will be. But that you just risk, when you wait until week 18, you risk that, first of all, the teams aren't what you thought they were going to be. But the other risk is that one team or maybe both teams don't have anything to play for, and it's a meaningless game. So if true, that would be surprising to me. But I'm not saying it's not true. I totally believe JP. I'm just saying it's surprising that they would schedule it that way. I would have thought Philly-Washington would have been a Fox game. I mocked it out Fox week 16. I had that one right, just the wrong location. And then another game at some point, in October or November on national TV in prime time. Week 18 games are TBD games. That you don't know what time. We don't know what time or even what network it'll be shown on until the week before, until week 17 ends. And then they figure out which game gets flexed into Sunday night, which games are going to put on Saturday night or Saturday and Saturday night. And then, that would be the biggest surprise of anything schedule-wise I've seen, is if 2 of the last 3 games of the season are against Philadelphia with the season finale. Certainly you set up the possibility, like Minnesota-Detroit last year, but they didn't think going into the schedule last year that Minnesota-Detroit to finish up the regular season was going to be for the 1 seed in the NFC. When they scheduled Minnesota and Detroit to play each other, Minnesota wasn't supposed to be very good. You know, if they really wanted their best chance, you know, for that division's best matchup, it would have been Detroit Green Bay on the schedule. But Washington Philly could be a blockbuster in week 18, or it could be, yeah, Philly wrapped everything up, or let's hope Washington wrapped everything up. They have nothing to play for. You know, the week 16 game, I can't see that game being meaningless. That game feels like, you know, a big game, and they put it as a standalone game on that Saturday, December 20th. So that's what we know so far. That's what I would put stock into. Definitely Madrid, definitely, you know, December 20th against Philly. And I've got it on very good source, multiple confirmations from people in the know that Washington's going to host Dallas on Christmas Day. I also mentioned Washington at Green Bay early in the season on Thursday Night Football. It looks like one of those league sites put out that it's week 2. I would certainly think that is a very good chance to be accurate. And I mentioned that I see Washington and Kansas City playing on Monday Night Football at some point, you know, in the middle of the season, maybe in November, that time frame. And then we've got the Giant opener at home. No time on that game. I don't know if it's going to be the second half of the doubleheader. I would think Fox would have a sexier matchup in the 4:25 window. Maybe Washington Giants is a 1:00 season opener. And then look for, you know, a Kansas City Monday night game at some point, followed by a trip to LA to face the Chargers. So look for that too. But keep it here all day. There's going to be a lot of, man, this thing just can't wait for the actual show anymore. It just can't. The last few years, it's been insanity in terms of, you know, the leaks coming out. Not all of them are right. You know, our guy, Mike North, who came on with us in mid-April, said anybody that thinks they know anything until it's actually done is fake news. Well, it's done now. We've already had games released. But again, thinking about Washington, pretty good chance it's Giants. Pretty good chance it's Packers, Giants at home in the season opener. Pretty good chance week 2 at Packers. JP had Bears week 6 on Monday Night Football. We know Dolphins is locked in Madrid. We know Eagles on December 20th at home is locked in. And I am very confident that what I broke earlier today, Dallas on Christmas Day, is locked in. And then JP's got finishing at Philly. I don't like 2 games against the. I want one of those Eagles games to be, you know, in the heart of the football season. Saving 2 out of the last 3 weeks, the 2 teams that were in the NFC title game last year, it's an odd scheduling quirk if it turns out to be true. So they would go Eagles on a Saturday, Cowboys on a Christmas Day, and then they'd get, you know, kind of that mini bye until the final weekend of the season to go to Philadelphia. That would be one where I would bet the schedule makers somehow just landed on that and they didn't like it, but they didn't have any other choice. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe they're convinced Washington at Philadelphia, that's going to be the game in week 18. Could be 2 great teams, but it could be 2 teams that have already locked up their playoff fate and their playoff seeding. That's possible too. Man, we are having conversations, locked up playoff seeding in week 18 that we just have never had before heading into this season. All right, there's some more Dan Quinn from the Rich Eisen show that I thought you'd want to hear. This was Quinn talking about JD 5, as in Jaden Daniels, number 5, as a competitor.
And how much do you instill that sort of stuff in Jaden Daniels? Again, I'm sorry to keep on, turning to one guy, but you know the world, right? And in this league, the quarterback-driven league. I mean, how do you install that enrichment into somebody who is already so talently enriched, right? How do you do that?
I think the secret sauce of Jaden, like, he already is this rare competitor, Rich. And so that's the thing maybe you don't know about somebody until you spend that much time with him. But there is no flinch in Jaden Daniels. Like, he already is a rare competitor, and you added the innate talent to it. So I don't think it's the other way around with him, like this innately talented person, and then you had the competitiveness. I think the competitiveness for him came first. As talented as he is, and even as good as his legs are, he'd be a tremendous, just pure pocket passer. But when he gets outside the pocket, and now he's a dual threat, man, he is lethal. But that competitive side of him, he's in the rare company, Rich, of the best. And that's all the unseen work that goes in of him getting ready for those moments that he had. Like, he had practiced those so many times. There was nothing by coincidence with that.
This was like the first thing that they started to talk about, with Jaden Daniels, is that he is a special competitor. Man, we got, knock on wood, they got it right, man. They got it right on every front. They got the talent right. They got the fit for today's football right. They got the gym rat work ethic right. They got the guy that's smart. They got the guy that's highly competitive. They got everything right about this one. And it's been a long time since we could say that about a key player picked super high in the draft. There was a lot of failure at that number 2 spot in the draft. But wow, even as we sit here after the fact, Quinn does, on the intangible stuff, the non-football stuff, as much as he does anything else. He was asked about, there were a couple of follow-up questions to that on Jaden Daniels from Rich Eisen. I want you to hear those.
So do you stoke it? Stay out of the way?
Yes, absolutely.
What do you do?
Throw gas on it.
You throw gas on it.
Yes, because that also raises the level of competitiveness of all his teammates, of the organization, and we really stand for that here. And so, from Adam first through me to the team, like, that is what we're about, and we love that. We try to find that in others and reward it and embellish it to let them know this is who they are. And there's so many unique players here on this team, Rich. Unique players here on this team, Rich, that we wouldn't talk about on a show, but that have huge roles and impacts here. And the type of teammates they are, like, not every player is going to be great like Jaden. Man, like, you can be a great teammate, and it's part of what makes coaching this team so much fun. Like, there's a hell of a group of guys here together that are really battling for it. So that part makes coaching this team so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, McLaurin obviously is an OG. My guy Sanders still from Michigan is another, is a young guy now in his second year as well from that draft class. I mean, I could go on. That's why it is so exciting in your area. But I'll take one last bite at this apple before letting you on with the rest of your day. You got a good example of how you stoked it with Jaden Daniels, because again, he's so even keel. I wouldn't even know what it looks like when he's stoked. You know what I mean? Like, what you got a good example of you doing that, Dan?
Oh yeah, there's plenty. I can think back to the end of last season, outside for a lot of 27, 28 degree practices, and reminding him, hey, maybe inside today too. Not a chance, bro. We were outside team in the NFC East, and he would proceed to go outside, and a number of practices like that. From the offensive side, the ball did not hit the ground. So that was his way of showing, yeah, I'm ready for anything. And those are the moments that I think about a lot.
So he's like, it's cold. Let's go indoors. And you're like, nope, you're in the NFC East. Let's see you do it.
That is correct,
kid. And he's like, and I'll show you, we're not going to have the ball hit the ground.
That was Quinn yesterday with Rich Eisen. I thought that last question, because I had not heard the answer yet. Max cut this stuff up. I thought he was going to mention that Atlanta game. The Atlanta game when he was near exhaustion, at the end of that game in overtime, and what a drive that was. I mean, there were so many moments, but that drive in overtime where, he ran, on that first down into the 1st and goal situation, and Mariota kind of came out, and during a time, I mean, there were moments there, and he had to take his breath. Remember, after a timeout, they needed a timeout just so he could get his breath. I'm pulling up that last drive because I want to know how many yards he ran for. I forget how many yards he ran for. Scrambled for 7, so that's 7. Keeper for 7, 14 yards rushing. Scrambled for 16, 30 yards rushing. Scrambled for no gain, 30. Scrambled for 6, 36, and then threw the touchdown pass. It was after that last scramble on 2nd and goal at the 8. He got down to the 2-yard line, and that was when Mariota came out, talked to him, and he went back out there and threw the touchdown pass to Zach Ertz for the game winner. That was, man, what a game that Falcon game was from him. 127 yards rushing on 16 carries, 36 of them coming in overtime on that drive. Oh, by the way, threw 3 touchdown passes as well in the game. What a season he had. And now highly profiled in season 2. We got a lot of the games. You've heard a lot of them. Right now, what we seem to be locked in on is home against Giants in the opener, at Packers week 2 on Thursday Night Football, a week 6 game against the Bears on Monday Night Football, Madrid week 11 against the Dolphins, week 16 at home on December 20th on a Saturday against the Eagles, Cowboys on Christmas Day at FedEx at Northwest Stadium, and then a season ender at Philly. Your thoughts on what we're hearing so far about the schedule? What do you like? What don't you like? What do you still want to see? What are you hoping to see pop up when the actual schedule comes out? 301-230-0980. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980 and the team980.com.
All right, more schedule news rolls throughout the day. The Washington Commanders will reportedly open their season against the New York Giants, and according to Kevin Sheehan, they will play the Dallas Cowboys on Christmas, and according to JP Finley, they will close out their season in Philly against the Philadelphia Eagles. The full schedule release show with Linnell Willingham tonight, right after Craig Hoffman's show, right here on the Team 980. That's 7 p.m. The Nats extend their losing streak to 7 games. They fall to Atlanta 5-2. The NBA Pacers, they close out the Cleveland Cavaliers 114-105. Pacers had 5 players score 10 or more points. Tyrese Halliburton led them with 31. The Nuggets fall to the Thunder 112-105. It's not for a lack of trying, though. Nikola Jokic had 44 points, 15 rebounds, 5 assists. Shea, on the other side, put up a well-rounded 31, 6, and 7. The Caps, they are off tonight. They will take on the Carolina Hurricanes tomorrow. Lars Eller will draw out of the lineup, and McMichael will move to center. Taylor Radish will be in, and as will Ryan Leonard. Their backs are against the wall. Caps are looking to stave off elimination. That'll be tomorrow night at 6:45 on 106.7 The Fan. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, and hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1, and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that's what's trending.
All right. Here's what we have so far. What we know officially is they're going to play the Dolphins in Spain week 11, and they're going to play the Philadelphia Eagles on December 20th at home. What we know based on really good, solid reporting is that they're going to play the Cowboys on Thanksgiving Day. I had that earlier this morning. That's going to be a Netflix, either a 1 o'clock or a 4:30 game on Christmas Day at home. I was told that it's more likely 1 p.m. But Cowboys Christmas Day in Landover. We also know they're not playing Thanksgiving Day. If you didn't know that already, the 3 Thanksgiving Day games, I think, have been announced. So they're not playing on Thanksgiving Day. We know that they're playing the Packers early in the season on Thursday Night Football. I had that, but it was also leaked that it was week 2, and I agree that that's probably a true leak at Green Bay, week 2, Thursday Night Football. And JP Finley had Bears week 6 Monday Night Football, and has the Eagles as the season end in week 18 on the road. I have also mentioned they are going to play, I'm pretty sure that my sources on this are accurate. They're going to play Kansas City on Monday Night Football. I just don't have the date. I think it's November. We'll find out. And it wouldn't surprise me if following that game, they are also on the road, which would be a tough trip to the Chargers after playing on Monday Night Football at Arrowhead. We'll see how that breaks. But of what you've heard so far, what do you like? What don't you like? And what would you like to still hear and or see when it's unveiled tonight here on Schedule Day 2025? 301-230-0980. All right, is there anything you're hoping to see, Max?
You know, I'm not going to, I don't have my hopes up for anything specifically. I'm just excited to get the full schedule release and go through it, because that's something that I like to do every year, is just sit down. I just go through wins and losses. And I know it's impossible to predict, but it's just a fun little exercise that we get to do right in the middle of May. Just kind of it's a little island in the ocean between football seasons, you know.
You'll learn from being a part of this show. I don't do the win-loss thing after the schedule comes out.
I know.
But anyway, but real quickly, if so far the games that we've had some good reporting on or the league's made official, it is 2 prime times and then 3 standalones. The Saturday late season against the Eagles, the Madrid game, and also the Cowboys on Christmas Day. I think we're going to see another 3 primetime games minimum. I'm surprised one of them isn't going to be against Philadelphia at some point before week 16. If JP's reporting's right and they're going to close at Philadelphia, that would be the biggest surprise to me. 2 games against the Eagles in the final 3 weeks of the season. Bit of a quirky kind of a thing. Remember a few years ago, they played the Giants twice in a couple of weeks. They've done it with the Cowboys here in recent years in scheduling. But potentially killing one of the Philadelphia games, putting it in week 18, where there's great risk on what the actual impact of that game will be. That would be the surpriser to me. I think we're going to see Kansas City on a Sunday night. I guess to me now, we're probably going to see Detroit, Denver, or maybe both in prime time at some point. That's what I'd be looking for as well. I mocked the Seahawks as a Monday night game late, but that's, right now they don't have, based on the reporting, there's no Sunday night football mention. They're going to be on Sunday night football, guys. They're absolutely going to be on Sunday night football, and I would say no less than 2 times. So looking at the rest of what we haven't seen, Detroit, Denver, the other Dallas game, but I would imagine that might be a Fox game. But if Fox gets both Philly games potentially, although that could be flexed, I think we're going to see a couple of Sunday night games, Denver, Dallas, and Detroit, all as possibilities. All right. What do you make of what we kind of know so far? What would you like to see? Let's start with Andrew and Sterling. Andrew, go ahead.
Well, Kevin, I think the biggest thing is the late season games against Dallas and Philadelphia. I'm sure you remember the one of the best atmospheres I've ever been in. I was about 10 years old. Last game at RFK against Dallas, they had nothing to play for, but we had everything to play for. Last game at RFK in one of the best environments. And on Christmas, I think that'll be pretty special. Don't know if I can make it myself, but I think that'll be great to see. And then having the Eagles there right before then, finishing in Philly, I think it makes for a special end of season run in very meaningful games.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if Dallas on Christmas Day, how that will be received by the home fans, but maybe that's a way to keep more Cowboy fans out of the stadium. I don't know. You know what I've noticed in recent years? It doesn't matter when these games are played. If it's a good game, the place is packed and people watch on holidays. Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it. Let's go to Paulie. Paulie, go ahead.
Big guy, L to the W, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Hey, what Dan Quinn said? Anybody, anywhere, anytime. And this is going to hold so true to this year's schedule, man. Hey, what T.O. say? Get your popcorn ready. Get your popcorn ready, man. I'm loving this schedule, man. One thing for sure is we're going to be battle tested, you know? And saying all that, yeah, go get Hendrickson from Cincinnati. We need to be ready for these teams. Let's just go get them. You know, I'm loving this schedule, man. I'm like you, though. I'm waiting for. I want to see where we playing, where and when we playing Dallas in Dallas, because I'm going to that game. You know what I mean? So I'm just waiting on that one to circle out. But I like the schedule, man. I like the games at the end. If we get Philly at the end, that's cool. You know what I mean? And also, you know, like you said a couple minutes ago, don't forget about the flex schedule. I'm pretty sure we're going to be set up for at least a couple of flexes this year, man. We primetime players again.
we are getting carried away, but you're probably right.
Thank you, Jaden Daniels. Thank you, Jaden Daniels, man. We're primetime players again, man. You can't ask for more, man. Like I said, we're going to be battle tested. I'm ready to roll, man. I wish this is going to be like the longest 3-4 months ever for the season to start, man.
I know, just waiting for it.
I'm ready.
But you know how this works, and I don't need to explain to you. You're a seasoned vet. What it looks like on May 14th isn't necessarily what it'll look like when you get to those games. It's a massive now. It's going to be cool to see all those primetime games, but just as easily as you could get flexed into one, you can get flexed out of one too. So what we need to do is keep 5 upright, and as long as 5 is upright, they'll be certainly the relevant team in the matchups, I would think. Thanks.
Hey, but look, we made strides to keep him 5. We made strides to keep him 5 upright in this offseason. We signed Tunsil. We drafted an offensive lineman. We got to think like Joe Gibbs, man. No game is too light. No team is least. You know what I mean? Every game, every team is important.
Giants week 1 is almost feeling like you better get that one. I've already installed Washington as an 8.5-point favorite. Max, make sure we remember that because tomorrow the week 1 lines will probably be out. I got Washington at minus 8.5. Let's see how close I get.
So you already got your first game on your smell test then.
Well, I don't know if it's going to work for that one. But all right, I got to roll. Those of you that I didn't get to on phone, sorry about that. Chris Russell's next.